Madam President Silvia Fernandez de Gemende, President Hofmansky, Madam Chair of the Board of the Trust Fund for Victims, Excellencies, civil society representatives, respected judges and ladies and gentlemen. I must start, if I may, by acknowledging the role and contribution of the Registrar, Mr. Peter Lewis. This court is a difficult place to work with very demanding responsibilities. It can be lonely and challenging in equal measures. And as this is the last budget round of discussions and the last Assembly of State Parties that the Registrar will attend in his current capacity, I really want to acknowledge his amazing courtesy, unfailing professionalism, and very real attempt to tackle myriad difficult issues in a way that we can all be very proud of. He is going to be an immense loss to the International Criminal Court. It was in August of this year when I made my way to Kalma camp in the north of Darfur, where I met men, women, and children that had been living in those camps for almost 20 years. And they greeted me and my small delegation with chants of "Welcome, welcome, ICC. Welcome, welcome, ICC." And it was a moment of very genuine reflection and a moment of deep humility in which one could very palpably see the hope and the expectations of normal people who have lived through unprecedented times, who believe that justice is not a word, but it is a promise that is going to be collectively delivered. It revealed the potential of this court, but as I told the Security Council 2 days later from Khartoum, whilst the opening of the trial of Mr. Abdurrahman, Mr. Ali Kushaib, the first trial emanating from the first referral by the Security Council, was a very momentous moment, a very important moment for victims. We certainly do not deserve the thanks that we received on that day, and we have collectively an awful lot to do to vindicate the promises of survivors, and that applies not just to Kalma camp or to Sudan, but to the different situations that are before the court. We have a real moral as well as legal responsibility, in my view, to do much more and strain every sinew to be worthy of the affection and warmth of hopes of those individuals, whether in Kalma or in Cox's Bazar, or the list goes on. This year, 2022, I think we have charted a very clear way in the Office of the Prosecutor to better fulfill the hopes and expectations that are placed upon us. Now, at about 1 o'clock in the Oceania room, I will be presenting for the first time, it's a new initiative, an annual report of the office. And that will be distributed, it will be available also online electronically. But one thing I will recall is that a year ago, when I gave my first address as prosecutor, I emphasized some key objectives that I would strive to meet. One of them was to reorganize the office and improve the workplace culture. One was to focus better in terms of crimes of sexual or gender-based crimes and crimes against children. I identified a goal to make the office that I have the honor of leading more nimble, more agile, and more field-based wherever possible. So we bring the office closer to the people that are impacted by crimes. I emphasized the need to embrace modern technology, and I repeatedly emphasized the reality that we cannot succeed unless we build new partnerships, not only as an institution or with the Assembly of State Parties, but with non-state parties as well, with civil society organizations and also with international institutions. In terms of the workplace culture and panel, I'm pleased to report that with your support, we now have 2 deputy prosecutors. We now have the new 2-pillar structure that was detailed last year. We have lawyers and investigators and analysts and trial support assistants and case managers sitting together in the same physical space. My deputies and I have continued the process of open door policy, once a week, seeing staff at whatever level. And we've also instituted monthly lunches with different teams. Based upon the work that the President mentioned of the independent expert review and the report that emanated from that, I constituted an ad hoc workplace committee. Last December, with the kind support of Norway, we had a side event, and this year we also had another town hall, and I released to the staff an anonymized version of that report. I've referred matters to the independent oversight mechanism where necessary. We've dealt with certain other matters by way of performance issues. And we have, with the fantastic support of the Special Advisor on Workplace Culture, Ms. Perna Sen, she has assembled an advisory group of staff members and also a new committee called Are We There Yet? We're not. We're not there yet, but I think there is a direction of engagement with staff in which we can collectively fulfill the aspiration that the office that I lead should be really amongst the most vibrant places to work. In terms of my promise to focus more on sexual and gender-based crimes and crimes against children, I wish to acknowledge the fantastic work of the men and women of the office. We have excellent, outstanding, world-class special advisors. I can't name all of them, but on this topic, particular recognition must be given to Veronique Aubert, Special Advisor on Children, Kim Selinger, Special Advisor on Sexual and Gender-Based Violence, and also Professor Lisa Davis, Special Advisor on Gender Persecution. Tomorrow there will be a side event with Veronique Aubert on children, where myself and her and the 2 deputies will take part. On Wednesday we are launching, for the first time, a policy paper on gender persecution. We are also moving forward with the operational manual that was also an item mentioned by the independent expert review report, and hopefully next year that will be ready. And we have a new head of the Gender and Children's Unit reporting directly to the Deputy Prosecutor. In terms of the promise of moving more to the field and becoming more nimble, well, for the first time in the history of the ICC, in relation to the Security Council, I was honored to deliver 2 briefings in this reporting period to the Security Council from Khartoum and also then from Tripoli. In addition to that, my deputies and myself have had a number of high-level engagements with many situation countries, whether they are Venezuela or Ukraine, the Central African Republic, Guinea, Nigeria, Bangladesh, the list goes on. And next year, God willing, some of my objectives will be also to go to the state of Palestine, Afghanistan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. With the support of the President and the Registrar, we are moving. It's not all talk, we are moving to a more field-based presence. I mentioned to the Security Council that in the last period we had had an almost continuous field-based presence in Libya and in the region. We have, with the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the government of Bangladesh, already an interview facility that is operational and is being used in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar. President Zelensky said last week that he has agreed the opening of a field office, and the President has kindly designated Kyiv a formal duty station. And I've already mentioned in different fora the agreement of Venezuela and also Sudan to establish field offices there. Core activities, as the President mentioned, this has been an extraordinarily busy period. We've opened the trial in the Central African Republic case of Said. We've opened the case of Mr. Abdurrahman, Mr. Ali Kushaib in the Sudan situation. There's been a contempt case in Kisheru arising from the situation in Kenya. We've also opened new situations, of course, Venezuela, with an unheralded 43 states that have joined hands in seeking to refer that matter to the rule of law. And we've also responded in this period to applications by the Philippines and by Venezuela to applications to defer matters. And we've asked judges that we would like to continue to investigate. Innovation is not just technology. For the first time since the establishment of the Rome Statute, we've applied to the judges of the court to use the provisions of the Rome Statute that allow confirmation hearing in absence in the Coney case. And I think this is really important. I think our responsibility is to try to build strong cases and then to use the legal architecture to the maximum extent possible to vindicate the rights of survivors to justice. I think, to me, this is what a victim-centered approach really means, to preserve the testimonies of victims and make sure individuals that are fugitives to justice expedite proceedings, because if cases are confirmed by judicial decisions, they will go straight to trial, avoiding delay. I've, of course, closed preliminary examinations, not only in the Colombia situation with a new memorandum of understanding, but recently I went to Guinea and we closed a preliminary examination in the Guinea situation, also with an MOU, which shows that a relationship, a new vibrant cooperative relationship, may be possible outside the confines of a preliminary examination. And I've also developed a clear plan of action to conclude the investigative phase in a number of other situations. I hope to make announcements in relation to that by the end of the year. I've contacted the couple of states concerned, and this will continue into next year, which is part of something I said before my election and last year, that to have the impact, the office needs to go narrower and go deeper, have more suspects per situation, and really have an effective result. Partnerships are absolutely key, and everybody has to be involved in that. I was delighted that in February, for the first time for 17 years as prosecutor, we were invited to the African Union Heads of State Summit in Addis. I had very good meetings with the former president of the AU, President Tshisekedi, also twice in this reporting period with President Macky Sall, and also 2 meetings with the chair of the Commission, Faki, to build new vibrant partnerships that we're not in competition. We want to cooperate, not only in relation to Guinea or the MOU that we signed with the Central African Republic, but also in the Sahel region, or the special court in the CAR that the President mentioned. Eurojust is another example. For the first time ever, the Office of the Prosecutor has joined as a participant with the joint investigative team with Eurojust, with 6 countries in the Ukraine situation, but we did the same thing in Libya, along with Italy, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Europol, and that new partnership has already brought dividends, as is demonstrated by the recent transfer in relation to human trafficking of individuals from Ethiopia into the courts of Italy and the Netherlands. Non-state parties as well. I've been to Washington and New York, and as I said at the outset, we need to reach out with state parties and non-state parties alike. And I was delighted the registrar has also been to Washington, D.C. only a couple of months ago, a bipartisan delegation of senators came to the court, and I, just a few weeks ago, also had further engagement with bipartisan groups of senators in Washington, D.C. Whatever the fractured state of domestic party politics or the dysfunction in certain areas of international relations, everybody has a role to play to be on the side of humanity. And I think this is also extremely important moving forward. Civil society has an immensely important role to play. And again, for the first time ever, we have produced a handbook for civil society organizations, which we launched and produced together with Eurojust and the Genocide Network. And that is something already that has been extremely well received by our colleagues in civil society. And whilst we had the once-a-year annual court meeting with civil society, I've also initiated in May a new initiative that, in addition to that, we will have at least 2 thematic meetings with civil society organizations. We had the first just a month ago, focused on children. And I was delighted that in addition to the special advisors, the experts of the office, the Gender and Children's Unit, we also managed, with the help of the trust fund that was established in March and also the European Union grant, 70 civil society representatives were brought to The Hague from Palestine, from Libya, from the Myanmar situation and others. So I'm grateful to the support that's been given in relation to trust fund and secondees. Technology already, we have a plan of action to move into the digital age by using proper effective tools, and already we're using artificial intelligence for translation tools to save time and move things forward more quickly. Fuel in the engine is always needed, but the trust fund was also, and the secondments that have been received, was also born of a realization that the engine in the vehicle of the office needed to be overhauled. It needed to be tuned and be able to get us collectively to the destination of justice that is our ultimate goal. Of course, it needs fuel as well, but the chassis and the engine also have to be in working order. Madam President, the past year has brought perhaps unprecedented attention in the form of the commitment to accountability that we've heard from heads of state and heads of government and civil society actors by victims around the world in myriad different situations. Every life matters equally. No lives are more precious than other lives. But this joint obligation, the promises that I've adumbrated, promises made and promises kept in this last year, are not, with the greatest of respect, promises from me alone as prosecutor, nor are they promises of the president of the court or the registrar. They are promises that all of us have made to something that's profound, and this belief that justice is the right of every individual, however invisible they may be to many today, however powerless they may be today. And whilst we have seen a renewed focus on the crime of aggression in the light of the Ukraine situation, it's my view that this is a very important moment to focus on the institutions we actually have, the institutions you, civil society, and the court have built together. And when we recognize that there's a gap in that architecture, in my view, we should try to address it through the Rome Statute that was carefully negotiated and carefully built, and which we are trying to fund to vindicate the rights of the survivors that I've mentioned. We don't want dilution, we want consolidation. And in this regard, I stand ready and am available at any time to explore how to strengthen this institution that you are collectively part of and that has been collectively built so that we can meet the needs of today, but also the requirements of tomorrow. Madam President, my last remark must be this, that the men and women of the office have worked tremendously over the last period. They've adapted to change, they're trying to move forward, they're working with civil society, with states, with international organizations. But the promises made and promises kept should be focused by all of us and all of you as you consider the budget discussions underway. If one looks to the statements by heads of government of your countries, back in capitals, your heads of government, your heads of state, your foreign ministers, we have to make sure that those promises are realized if we were true in our words of support of the rules-based system. If we do not support this court now, there will be many questions that will have to be answered. If we do support the court now, this could be the beginning of a new dawn. And this is something that is not abstract. It is something that will mean an awful lot to the men and women and children of Kalma Camp that I referred to at the outset, the refugees we see around the world that are displaced because of conflict and crimes, and those that hope for a better tomorrow that you can help bring in if you also fulfill the promises you have made to support the Rome Statute system. Thank you so much.
I thank